Imagine waking up tomorrow, and half the people you know no longer have jobs, not because of a recession, not because companies failed, not because demand disappeared, because software got better, much better. The accountant replaced, the customer service team replaced, the marketing department mostly automated, the legal assistant, the analyst, the recruiter, the call center, the content creator, the translator, the scheduler, the researcher, gone, not all at once, but fast enough that everyone notices. And suddenly, the question changes. People stop asking, what can AI do? They start asking, what happens to everyone it replaces? Because jobs aren't just how people earn money. They're how people participate in the economy. And if AI replaces half the workforce, you're not just changing employment, you're changing the system built around employment. So what would actually happen if AI replaced 50% of jobs? This is what if. And here's what would happen if AI replaced 50% of jobs too. At first, the benefits look incredible. Businesses become more efficient. Tasks that once took hours take seconds. Costs fall. Output rises. Productivity explodes. Companies produce more with fewer workers. Services become cheaper. Information becomes easier to access. Decisions become faster. Entire industries become more efficient. And from a purely economic perspective, that sounds like progress. Because throughout history, technology has always increased productivity. The tractor replaced farm labor. Factories replaced manual production. Computers replaced administrative work. The internet replaced entire categories of jobs. And each time, new jobs eventually appeared. But this time feels different. Because AI isn't replacing muscle, it's replacing cognition. And that's where things become much bigger. At first, the jobs disappear quietly. Administrative work, data entry, customer support, scheduling, basic analysis, routine office work. Companies don't call it layoffs. They call it optimization, efficiency, transformation, automation. And for a while, the economy barely notices because productivity keeps rising. Profits improve, stock prices climb, investors celebrate, consumers enjoy lower costs, everything looks successful, until income begins disappearing, because someone can only buy products, tortilla, if they have money to spend, and money still comes primarily from work. This is where the system becomes complicated, because businesses need customers, not just efficiency. Customers. AI may reduce labor costs, but it doesn't automatically replace consumer spending. And if millions of workers lose income, demand begins changing. People spend less, delay purchases, avoid risks, reduce discretionary spending, and slowly, the same companies benefiting from automation begin losing customers, because productivity creates supply. But consumers create demand, and economies need both. Shrinks then another shift appears, the middle class, because many of the jobs AI targets first sit in the middle of the economy. White-collar work, knowledge work, administrative work, professional services, the kinds of jobs that built modern middle-class lifestyles. And when those jobs disappear, the economic ladder changes. Some workers successfully transition, others don't. Some learn new skills, others struggle to compete. And suddenly, the gap between winners and losers begins widening. There's also ownership, because AI doesn't own itself. Someone owns the models, the infrastructure, the data centers, the platforms, the networks, and when productivity rises dramatically, the benefits flow somewhere. The question is, where? Because if fewer workers are needed, but output keeps increasing, more value accumulates with whoever owns the productive systems, and that creates a new debate. If AI creates enormous wealth, who receives it? The workers, the companies, the investors, the platform owners? Because the answer determines what society looks like next. Governments face a challenge too, because modern governments rely heavily on employment, income taxes, payroll taxes, consumer spending, economic activity. Much of the tax system assumes people work. But what happens when millions don't? Revenue falls. Demand for assistance rises, political pressure grows, and suddenly, governments are forced to rethink the relationship between work and income. This is where one idea becomes impossible to ignore: universal basic income. Because if AI produces enormous amounts of value, some argue that value should be distributed, not through jobs, but through ownership of productivity itself. Supporters see stability, critics see dependency, others worry about cost. But regardless of the solution, one thing becomes clear: a world where half the workforce is unnecessary cannot operate exactly like the world before it. And then something deeper happens. People don't just lose jobs, some lose purpose. Because work isn't only economic, it's social, psychological, cultural. For many people, their job provides identity, routine, status, community, direction. And if AI removes millions of jobs, society must answer a new question: what gives people meaning when productivity no longer requires them? Because replacing income is difficult, replacing purpose may be even harder. Over time, entirely new industries emerge, just as they always have: AI trainers, AI auditors, human AI coordinators, synthetic environment designers, digital economy managers, jobs that don't exist today. Some people adapt, some thrive, some build entirely new careers, but the transition isn't smooth, because the economy can change faster than people can. And that's where disruption lives, not in technology itself, but in the speed of transformation. At this point, something else becomes clear. The real question isn't whether AI can replace jobs; it probably can. The deeper question is what happens after. Because technology has always been about increasing productivity, but societies were built around human labor. And once productivity no longer requires as much labor, the relationship between work, income, and purpose begins changing, possibly forever. So the question isn't just what happens if AI replaces 50% of jobs. It's deeper than that. It's about work, income, purpose, ownership, opportunity. Because AI may not simply automate tasks, it may force society to redefine why people work in the first place. And maybe the real question is this: if machines can create most of the value, how do humans continue creating meaning?